Hello my dark darlings, and welcome back to Miss Macabre. Tonight I have some chilling horror stories for you to fall asleep to. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let the darkness pull you in. And if you enjoy late night horror, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me again for more. Now, let's begin. Claire Bennett lived alone in a small second-floor apartment in Dayton, Ohio, and for the most part she liked it that way. She taught middle school English, spent her evenings grading papers, and wrote short stories late into the night when the insomnia hit. Her neighbourhood was quiet, old, and forgettable, except for the vacant brick building directly across the street. It had been abandoned for years. At least, that's what everyone said. The first time Claire noticed the man in the window, she was brushing her teeth before bed. She glanced up through the bathroom glass and saw a figure standing perfectly still on the third floor of the empty building, just behind a broken pane. He was too far away to make out clearly, but there was no mistaking the shape of a person. By morning, he was gone. She convinced herself it was a trick of the light, a coat rack, a shadow, anything but what it looked like. Then she saw him again and again, always at night, always in the same upper window, sometimes standing, sometimes sitting, always facing her building. Claire mentioned it to a neighbour, who laughed and said squatters occasionally snuck in there, but police usually chased them out. That should have made her feel better. Instead, it made her realise she wasn't imagining it. Then the messages started. One freezing morning, she stepped into her living room and saw words traced in the condensation on the inside of her window. You smile in your sleep. Claire nearly dropped her coffee. She hadn't written it. No one else had a key. The window had been locked from the inside. She called the police, who searched the apartment and found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No prints they could use. The officer suggested maybe she'd done it half asleep without remembering. Claire almost laughed in his face. She started sleeping with all the lights on. Then small things began moving. A coffee mug left in the sink would appear on the counter. Her reading glasses vanished for 2 days, then reappeared on her pillow. Once her laptop was open to a document she hadn't touched in weeks, with a new sentence typed at the bottom. I like the stories where the girl doesn't escape. Claire stopped sleeping altogether after that. She bought extra locks, covered her windows, told herself she was safe, but the worst part was the feeling of being observed. It followed her into the shower, into bed, into every silent room. She stopped writing, she stopped inviting people over, she started jumping at every creak in the floorboards. Then one night she woke to a faint clicking sound, not outside, inside the room. She bolted upright and scanned the darkness, heart racing. The sound came again, tiny, mechanical, almost insect-like. Claire switched on the lamp and began tearing the room apart. She searched her dresser, under the bed, inside the closet, behind the curtains. That's when she found it. A tiny camera, no bigger than a bottle cap, taped beneath the frame of her bed. Claire screamed so loudly the downstairs neighbour pounded on the ceiling with a broom handle. Police finally took her seriously. The building across the street was searched the next morning. On the third floor, in the room facing her apartment, they found a folding chair, empty food wrappers, cigarette butts, and a set of binoculars. In the corner was a sleeping bag. Hidden beneath it was a notebook filled with entries about Claire, what time she left for work, what she wore, what she ate, what night she cried, what time she turned out the lights. There were even descriptions of her stories, meaning he hadn't just watched her from across the street. He'd been inside her apartment The man was never caught. Claire moved out within a month, but she still wakes up some nights convinced someone is standing at the foot of her bed. Because the scariest part wasn't the abandoned building. It was realising the distance between watching and entering was much smaller than she ever believed.